My name is the Philosopher's Poet. I'm here with Arthur Rutledge. He's a life coach, philosopher, empowering speaker, um, and trainer, bridging the gap in self-development with the known and the unknown, that great unspeakable thing that we know of and we feel that we can't quite, that we can't quite put our finger in, but we know it's there, on the tip of your tongue. Arthur, I don't know if you'd like to say a few things.
I am happy to be here. Thank you for having me on. Uh, I, I have to give it back to you because now I've had a chance to know you for a while, and to be in a place where you have a similar heart that wants to search for knowledge, that takes on that word of loving, learning, philosopher in the Greek, and what that looks like. I mean, and then the poetry that comes from both of our hearts that we always get a chance to communicate. That's a blessing in itself. So I'm happy to enhance and cover anything that this episode has to give for that individual that is at heart a philosopher or making their life a plan and and putting together ideas and concepts that are going to enhance and serve what people are up to.
Yeah, excellent. And in a way, everyone, including yourself, is a philosopher. You went back to the sort of Greek, and philosophy means love of wisdom. And
Hmm.
obviously, planning your future, planning ahead, or rediscovering yourself is definitely something that the wise venture into. So you yourself, you are a philosopher. It's just
Yeah,
that obviously,
it's from. I think it started from a young age. I was a philosopher probably before I even thought about the idea of wisdom and things like that. I mean, going to church and hearing the wisdom of patriarchs and matriarchs like Solomon, and the movements of courageous understanding, the humbleness of Moses, and still these people had different leader type styles, but
mm,
they had a philosophy that was built around their strengths. You
yeah.
know what were those qualities that added to their ability to be in front of people and connect well.
Mm, yeah, definitely. I think that's something I'd almost forgotten, this idea that those figures actually represent different aspects of humanity in their sort of pursuit for understanding who God was and, in essence, who they were. So that's really interesting you bring that up. It's something that, like I said, I'd almost forgotten that. Um, and I really want to sort of touch, I guess, first on these sort of messages, this wisdom, going to church, any other thing that really left a stamp on your heart and your mind was influential in forming who you are today. Um, Not just who you are in the present moment. I mean, before you became the life coach, the speaker, the the man of rediscovery. Because
Hmm.
sometimes becoming who we are isn't a matter of knowledge; it's a matter of memory or remembering or
Hmm.
retracing steps and then seeing something in plain sight from something we'd heard eons ago. And we only really now begin to understand it. We now have the ears to hear and the eyes to see when we didn't before. So I'd really get your take on that in terms of how it molded you today and how it gave you the ingredients to start remolding.
Hmm. I mean, I went through this. I just saw a quote. Can't remember it exactly, but the biggest part is we can't really know how we're gonna move forward, but we definitely see how life has put us where we're at from looking in reverse. And I'm paraphrasing, what that looks like because stories come from that. Our voice is found simultaneously from our past, our present, and our hope for the future. Or if
Mm.
it's not a hope for a future, it'll turn out to be a pretty bleak narrative for us. There's nothing to really walk towards if we don't find what that is. And for me as a child, church was a big part because I believe in a lot of cultures that makes up most of the planet. Uh, is some type of service that happens, and people never really say the word service, like services that you're going to, whether you're going to a mosque or a synagogue or a temple or a church, whatever that might look like. But these are services that are put in place, so it turns into an action, in the way it was, and it works directly and indirectly in us. So that involvement tells people, or it lets people, or includes people in this process. And so the process that I see or I perceive, even from a child, whether I liked it or did not like it, but more times just didn't understand it. Because as children, we only understand what we understand as children. We don't understand that what that might be as an adult or a senior citizen or whatever age or uh, um, or what envelops our awareness
Mm.
sooner to bring us to a maturity. So we don't know what that is, but every step does those things. So for me, it was three things besides, well, two things besides church. One was the people that I was around. Those added to my experience. The church added to my experience. And then it was the experiences that I participated in how I dealt with things as I was stepping into who I was becoming all the time. And, so you have you, depending on that experience, you have the independent person that, dependent person that depends on other people and things around them. That you have the independent person that finds it out for themselves more than, or at the same time as, while at the time that we're dependent with those individuals that are around us or those auxiliaries or whatever is giving us some type of this process. But then you have the interdependent side of it, the part where you know how to merge what you understand individually without having to lean on other individuals for that process, but you understand embracing what that what I could think of right now is that law of oneness out of the
Mm.
12 universal laws, that oneness that we all come together to benefit each other or not, depending on what we're willing to accept in um, how we see ourselves in the world. And so those were the three big things for me. So I had a small family on my mom's side. That's where I was mostly raised. Also with I had encounters with friends and their families by way of what that looked like, which and all these things. If you're I feel like, and I told people I feel like that I was much more aware when I was younger uh, than a lot of others that might have been around me. Forgive me if anybody sees this that I was growing up with, maybe, but it was things that um, because I was a really big observer of my space.
Mm.
and that's then they say that's the ultimate side of wisdom, right? The you can Yeah, you have a person that's always indulging and talking and putting into spaces and things like that. But the I think a real key thing was to be able to also, as I was excited about it, at the same time, be able to step back from it, so to speak, and look at it through and be able to and want to look at it from wherever I saw it, but then I wasn't stuck in that. And I think that's where the observing or the observer heart
Mm,
comes into play. And I think it's key for anybody that's gonna evolve in how they see themselves in the world.
No, I find that really interesting. You got me thinking as a child about the idea of observing, and the two most frustrating things for me and maybe for other people were, I guess one is more age constrained. It's basically the idea of fully understanding your surroundings. Because there's a distinction between having an innate sense that something feels right or wrong, or something feels in tune with you. But then as we get older and the intellect takes hold, um, that can either be a blessing or a curse if we know how to use it and we know our heart from our mind. And the second thing I was thinking of was having this having these observational skills. So gaining a sense of awareness of your surroundings, but feeling powerless to actually influence it to allow yourself to gain a sense of freedom or better purpose rather than being sort of on the rails and being carried. I think that's a real struggle. I mentioned childhood, but I'd imagine it's also something that a lot of people struggle with as adults. So I guess it'll be interesting from your perspective how you manage to navigate that massive thing. The thing of, I guess another analogy would be being able to see something, but almost feeling like you can't do anything about it.
Mhm. I think that's the plight of people in the world. I mean, we always are going to face these crossroads. And the first time I heard the word crossroad, I was in a Sunday school class for young adults. When you get to that place where you're a senior in high school, or even as early, maybe, I don't know. It depends on what cycle of life that you find yourself in, because some of us have to grow up a little sooner than later due to unfortunate circumstances or the circumstances that are right there for us to just deal with, whether we're ready or not. Here we jump into the great abyss that can leave us, find us either floating, treading, or swimming at any given time. And so this word, I remember this particular segment of our young adults in the church. We talked into it, and it was from the ages of 18 or yeah, 18 to 21. Because there's a lot of transition space right there. You just started getting used to driving. You just got used to exploring. You just stepped out of the first major institution that they say is the ultimate side of education,
Mm,
or you're stepping into the ultimate side of education with university or college, whatever that might look like for an individual, or getting, coming into the workforce fully, or not being under the umbrella of our parents, or people who are assigned over us for so long. What do we do when we're in this place where we're just figuring what that out? And these crossroads are these where you come to the place where it's not just a fork in the road, but it's just so many options. And I think in our world right now, much more than then, when I was growing up, we have so many options of information, but not a lot of us are getting educated. We're
mm,
not finding the wisdom of trusting ourselves, finding insight so we can begin to create foresight.
yeah.
in those things. And uh, it's I can't think of the name of the book right now. I think is I can't think of the name of it right now. But Anley Stanley, asked the question. One of the first things that I know about where I was at was, besides me being an observer, was I was a person that was in curiosity. I was curious about that plight, that human uh, sensibility, or or un, un unattached, can misguided understanding, or this place of ignorance where we get to explore a lot more, or be bewildered and be okay with that as we're swimming or walking through to those
Mm.
those things that really we gravitate towards, or we are understanding ourselves, and the beginning of that practice. So I that was the first thing that helped me to establish where I was at in my crossroad for
Mm.
myself. I knew that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I knew that from the age of 9 years old after going on a field trip. And I first saw computers and how they worked. And I thought, yeah, I didn't know how. I couldn't
Mm.
connect the how. And still in life, no matter how mature you come along, how far you come along, or how mature we think we are,
Oh yeah,
we still are stuck with the how, right? We make the
yeah,
how the biggest
yeah.
thing, but life is really not about the how.
Mm.
Really, it's about the why and the what,
Mm. Yes, definitely.
and establishing why is good for me in my heart, and why do I connect with that in that special way, and what am I going to do about that?
Mm. Mm. So it's funny because one of the people in my life, a few people in my life, who's very good at drawing me back to heart centered thought or thinking when I
Hmm.
get sort of wrapped up in the world, work or whatever's going on. Is my mum has the power to do that. So I'll speak to her on a weekend and I'll be saying X, Y, and Z, and she'll draw me right back to the source in such a simple way. Um, and the reason I mention that is because obviously we have to create this almost like tether back to, I'm going to say, home. Once we cross that sort of River Jordan, I'm using as a good analogy,
Hmm.
um, and we get to the land of our heart. Um, and then sometimes we forget that our heart is our home, and we become, let's say, passengers or tourists in our own land. We become strangers in our own land, not because we are strangers, but because we get so filled up with other people's ideas on how to live and what life means. Don't get me wrong, other people can inspire us and teach us things, but we have to be careful not to take on the mantle of power and significance of other people, and remember our own mantle of power and cloak. Otherwise, we can't operate within our power. We can help those, but only if we are operating with our own operating system, so to speak. So it's just that being tethered back to that and being reminded of that on our journey, because as the rewards get greater for acting in one's truth in life when we discover it, so the same comes with navigating the rewards. So it's a real test of those things that are the best things about us get amplified. And when we take on more of that stuff that provides others with value and increases the value of ourselves in terms of love. But at the same time, it can also greater expose the things we have an opportunity to work on or to question that we've held on to in our lives actually maybe aren't significant now because they're stopping us from being the aspect of love that we're now acting through, or the lens.
Hmm. Yeah, that lens. Most of us are not willing
mm,
to put that lens up enough in our lives.
mm,
Um, oh, I often say, you go to a doctor, and if that doctor, you know, if you feel that doctor's not qualified, and you're gonna, even if you're at the hospital, even if you're finding out who this doctor is, uh, still you might not trust being in circumstance, that situation with that person.
mm,
We take in information that we feel like is going to protect us. Uh, and so if we find out that that doctor is one of the best, that he's helped a lot of people, we're going to feel more at ease,
mm,
and we're going to uh, let the process happen with what that looks like. But if we find out, he's okay. He had somebody that died on the on the operating table the day
oh,
before,
yeah.
or or he's talking, even if he's, his bedside mannerism is not in tune with a healthy environment,
Mm,
we're going to be reluctant
yeah.
to to even to even examine or see further than what that is. And I always, what I use that, or you could even use it, even as a fire, with a fire attendant,
Mm,
firefighter. They call it firefighter, but I call it fire attendant. I mean, fighting a fire
mm,
uh, is I feel like it's almost a losing battle. But if you attend to it, that means that you should be able to put out the flames. You can't fight the flames as much as attend to the flames, right? To do the
mm,
right thing. But these are just things to say that when we are looking through what that is at ourselves, we're hypercritical, and
yeah.
that Alan, that much uh, afforded analyst inside of us makes us the uh, uh, a person that we're not going to be able to readily trust in
Mm,
this thing, or this walk that we're in called life.
mm,
And we could be doctors are just human, just like us. I'm wearing the shirt and
I know. Yeah. Yeah.
perfectly imperfect. And I understand that when I step away from the idea of perfection,
Mm,
I'm able to put a microscope at my DNA and know that if I have these shortcomings, or if I have these things that I'm very capable of accomplishing in my life, so does the person across from me. And that gives me, it gives me empathy, and makes my human being human.
mm, yeah. I love
It
that.
it in that side, because it's only the is only how we are willing to change, or as Rumi says, as the wind blows, the grass bends, to find the flexibility in ourselves by way of an, I feel, philosophy, as we're talking about philosophy and how we identify with the world, how the world identifies with us, and how we work together or not, and all these type of intricate things, and how we are as children, and how we deal with our day-to-day lives, really uh, depends on how we're willing to evaluate our position in life as we're going through it, not overly judgmental about what we are up to, to
mm,
make sure that we get there without blowing a gasket. Can you imagine, like, the car is always worried everywhere that we're going inside of it, and and how much we would need to fix it if it was even more pressure on. And it doesn't make a difference if it's old or new, but over, wear and tear over time,
mm.
inevitably we're due for a breakdown.
Yeah.
And even breakdowns are something, if we take it in a constructive manner, we can find we it opens up opportunity. 2020, I wrote this part in my book, where 2020 was the roughest time that most of us can ever remember while we've been on this planet, no matter if you're 20 or whether you were 80. To have those type of that many occurrences
Mm,
that affected so many of us, emotional, mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever that is. Those things moved us towards something, or they moved us away from something, but we had to be a participant, a open, wide open, an open-minded participant in how we stepped into those. And a lot of us were, and a lot of us weren't. Um, but we always get to be in curiosity about how we feel about those things and face those things. And it helps us open up our comfort zone. It helps us to be able to see opportunity while we're in the midst of crap that we don't want to don't want to be in the middle of. But it keeps us aware. That's the power of always that telescope, that looking in the mirror, and seeing and checking in with ourselves. Uh, but our society has lacked looking at ourselves as much as we can or we get to. Uh, for I mean, people talk about happiness. Not It's not even for happiness' sake. It's literally to be very clear about
mm,
who we're becoming.
mm,
To understand that we're included in the promise, whether the promise of you know uh, being our best selves, doing the things that we like in our lives, being around the people that we want to be around, and
mm,
and feeling this place where uh, we always can come back to ourselves and be in gratitude and appreciation for what that that time on this planet is given to us.
mm. I remember someone talking to me about the pandemic period and mentioning this idea of multi-dimensionality, the idea
Hmm.
of creating new realities outside of your current reality. I interpreted that at the time and still to this day of taking opportunities to maneuver or navigate into other realities or opportunities that the situation created, even though it was quite in many respects, quite a dire situation, and lives were lost and people were, held in their homes and restricted. Um, so it was the idea of in this position, what can I do? Is there something I've always wanted to do or learn or contemplate on? When's the last time I sort of looked at myself in the mirror, faced myself? And there was a lot of shedding of skin during that period, individually and in terms of relationships. So you just sort of, you brought that really back to me when you mentioned that and you brought that. Um, you mentioned your book. Um, so I was going to touch on your book, the 11 Pillars of Confidence, um, and that seems to be quite a pivotal point, or one of the many milestones, and you recording that wisdom, and putting that out to the world. And I wanted you to give a flavor of what you wanted to do with that book and what you wanted to do for others more specifically. Um,
Wow, that's a It's interesting every time I'm asked a question similar to this one. Um, I always get into my heart chakra, my gut chakra. You know, like this this. I do feel that people start off on this mission in life that they don't know where it's going to lead them or what the outcome is going to be. But they get to a point where they don't care as much about the controllables.
Mm,
They are willing to do what needs to be done from their heart, and it supersedes the thinking the thinking process, the cognitive thoughts that come in that flow in with all the information that with us being in the information age and all that information flooding in, and then the RAS protecting us on some level, particular activating system, and it blocks out some of it, but the focused mind really comes from the intention of our discipline, the intention of a purpose.
mm,
And when I decided I wanted to write the book, because it wasn't anything that I ever thought that I would be doing or even wanted to do in my life. But as I continued to step into the person that wanted to see more of what we all deserve in the world, as Gandhi says, be the change you want to see.
mm. Yes.
You know, even his story is so profound, and many people like it. You know, Abraham Lincoln never thought as an abolitionist in the North, thinking that, yeah, I know I want to be a lawyer. I know I want to help out that side, but I don't see myself in fighting a civil war.
Mm,
Or Gandhi, as a lawyer, and being in South Africa, was only persuaded through the experiences that shaped, apart. He was shaped through by way of apartheid and people who are needing him and seeing a need. What was he able to rise to that and fill it? Now, I don't know if that is my future on that side, but I can relate to where they were before they got to where we all know them to be. I can relate to what that was, and I said the best way to do that is to get in front of people, even though I'm not in front of people. And the altruistic endeavor of what just my actions or my actions could provoke,
mm.
just by being the person that takes a stand in my own way
Yeah.
to the things that slow us down from having the things that we desire most in our lives. And it's really, I mean, material things is just it's, yes, we like those things, but what I found is if we don't have the inner things first, it doesn't create the inertia we need to have the
Mm,
outer things. I always have this quote: inner outer results come from inner commitments.
yeah.
That so the inside of me said, I can write something that can give even a 5% boost in confidence, or something for people to think about, maybe in a different type of way, to help give them, to just a nudge in the direction that's going to point them or get them to face or walk in a direction that's going to be conducive to growth
Yeah.
and empower them, I'm in,
Yeah.
and that led to the 11 pillars of confidence, uh, build and lead and empowered you.
Mm.
And then at the after I said I was going to do it, a little over a year later, it was written, and now my biggest satisfaction is that I know that it is going to change people's lives.
Mm.
I did. You don't know that while you're in it. Again, you don't know the result, right? But now that that was a decision that I committed to and I stuck with, the repercussions of it far excels my greatest expectation of of what I did. So the practice in itself always led me to continue to become, and now by way of that, others can become.
Mm. Yeah, I was what there was a line that came into my head. Um, Blending practicality with a profound understanding of human potential. I think that sums up. That's quite a poignant and beautiful phrase. Sort of innate potential has to be brought about through action and cultivating that action, cultivating confidence, as you say.
Mm,
Being a skill, not a gift. But the idea of blending pragmatism with idealism or potential with that which you think so you can become that which you think essentially that's something people have been struggling for years and you often had philosophers in ancient times on either side of that who are either more pragmatic or spoke about the human potential but were more contemplative. And
mhm,
obviously, it's not about rejecting one in favor of the other, it's about integrating both. I often think of the idea of Confucius and Lao Tzu, both philosophers in ancient China.
mhm,
Confucius was far more pragmatic in terms of reform and changes around education and agriculture, and Lao
mhm,
Tzu was sort of the almost like the aesthetic, like kind of spiritualist kind of. I'm in favor of anything that integrates it because I really think that's a trajectory that humanity has to go in. Integration has to be the way to go because integration breeds acceptance of who we are and who we can be. And I think in its highest vibration, it can be done in a non-judgmental way.
yeah, the practice of, and the hope I think of most philosophers, because I feel that, well, you have the passive philosopher that, like I said, gives in theory what that looks like, and they obviously do their best to walk in that way. But I think you have also uh, the passive aggressive philosopher that learns how to navigate the masculine and feminine side of the brain, the right and left lobes, to a place where things get done in people's hearts
Hmm.
while they're doing them, while they're moving through those. And we have examples of that throughout history. Uh, when we think of Socrates,
Yeah.
he didn't have much of a happy life. He was what you would call, like a lot of artists. They call, the ones they coin starving artists. Socrates was starving for the love of his wife, who was a nag and a critic, supposedly, right?
Yeah.
He didn't, he was always at the Acropolis because he didn't want, he he couldn't get a word in inchwise at home. All that wisdom just dropped to the ground, when he stepped through the door. Um,
mm,
but and the young men, the ones who craved knowledge, who was in curiosity, that was in the school of this understanding, sharing knowledge and everything like that. Uh, I feel the younger you are, the more aggressive you are around the philosophy. I feel we learn we learn through a lot more experience because our experience when we're younger is so visceral.
mm,
We're just gun ho, and we're not the pragmatic young person. That's a title of a book because it's not they're not greatly pragmatic, right? They're overzealous for the most part, and what they are because they're feeling life a lot more
mm,
because life hasn't had time to beat it out of them or take it or a certain new type of programming where they feel like they have to compromise it for a certain amount of ease and happiness with uh other things in their life. So the big compromises come along as we get older, 30 30s and up for the most part. I mean, but maybe some in our 20s as well. Uh, but and then his society rejected him because he brought people to think, and thinking person creates change
mm,
in society. And they said, listen, yeah, take we don't want you around anymore. You filling our kids' heads with this, and we can't make them the way that we want everybody are the what they call the normal or societal norm of a person anymore. So these
mm,
things were just examples of like what makes why we get to practice not shrugging off the idea of our thoughts, but also remembering that this responsibility of being able to have common sense, much less wisdom, gets to be acted upon as well. He no matter where he was in places where we wouldn't have needed much else as a partner that didn't believe in us, to
mm,
shrug off thinking for ourselves and just leave it to society or the powers that be in our household or uh, social constructs that envelop us every day. Doesn't take much more than that to kind of just step away from those, but but the heart that's fired up to give. That's why a lot of mentors, unsung heroes, I called them in my book, um, by way of books and seminars and events, uh, have really spoken into my life in that way. And I'm sure you as well, where you are always able to understand that your liberty is put in place, which with equal responsibility and accountability for how you take that information and and magnetize it, sharpen it, increase it somehow, not just by way of yourself, but by way of others, or as Napoleon Hill will call it, a mastermind group, whatever way that looks like. It could be a group, it could be two other people that's like-minded, and but always want to increase how we show up so we can always draw that, so we can magnetize that, so we can bring in, attract who we
mm,
are.
yeah,
Wayne Dyer, who's also from Detroit. I'm a Detroit, Michigan boy, 313. And Wayne Dyer, the rest in peace, awesome thinker, and it talked into vibration and things that a lot of us at that time in the 60s and 70s weren't talking to. And he was brave enough to be uncommon in
mm,
a common situation where we couldn't figure out the things being common, but uncommon we could figure out a lot more, and being open to the things, like I said, that change our hearts in that way. And I remember him, uh, talking into, uh, we are not what we want, uh, or we don't get what we want. We get who we are.
mm,
And that was a quote from him, remembering that we can want. We can always go in every direction, always in want, or found wanting,
mm, yeah,
and but not be able to hold what that truest one is, because we're just chasing after all these other things that seemingly in our, because we can see them, we feel like is ours, but not
mm,
everything we see is ours. The
yeah,
things that we feel are ours, because that touches into our subconscious. uh, that's what they call the subconscious brain, that really connects us from our physical to the divine,
mm,
and centers us in a way that we are well ready. We are, even if we don't think we're ready, to embrace uh, s- uh, the beauty that comes from clarity of our truth, of and always seeing if outside truths matches with our inside truths, to continue to help people to rise to their truths in certain ways. So it's interesting, because I did not I had a conversation with my godmother, and she asked me, she says, did you know that you had a gift with words? She's read some of my articles, she's read my book. She's blown away by what I'm able to accomplish. She didn't know me for that. We get
mm,
to stay consistent in who we are until people know us for what that is, and then it catches on, and then the fire turns into a blaze, right? And I let her, and I informed her that I had no idea, and she asked, "Did my mother know?" And I said, "It's no way." I feel I rest in peace. Buried my mom 2019, beginning of 2019, and I told her in jest that she's turned over in her coffin twice with the things that I've been able to do since she's been gone. E- uh, she was always empowering to me,
mm,
um, but you know, just like us, our parents, they only had what was at their disposal to understand about themselves, and how they explore, how they showed up in their courage, uh, in their daily walk, and building courage, or that is courage, to be able to see something outside of what everybody else saw, um, and continue to see it in themselves, to hold on to a torch of sorts, to get through the night in
mm,
whatever way they could. And that's when we only got as much as we could from them. And then it's up to us to advance even further and see what that is.
excellent. Mm. Okay. Um, well, I mean, it's been a real pleasure talking to you. I mean, the conversation got really dense, but I love that we have the ability to do that and go real deep into something. So I really appreciate you getting really into the heart of that. Um,
Appreciate you.
and I could
Thanks.
talk to
Thank
you.
you.
We could have this kind of conversation for the whole evening, but
Yeah.
unfortunately, time doesn't afford us to. However, before I do go, I will give you the opportunity just to make some announcements on your social media, your latest project, and I will give a mention to the audience that obviously there currently is a group that you run every Wednesday on Clubhouse. So
that you actually are on with us as much as you can and as long as you can stay on, because that that time space,
yeah,
uh that void between you and me and you across the pond, as they
yeah,
would say. So everybody have a club on Clubhouse. If you haven't heard of Clubhouse, is an app that you can create whatever space that you can hold for others, from where you want to talk from wherever your heart is. Uh, and this club that I have on there, because you're allowed to have clubs, is a society called Agape Legacies. Agape being the operative word or the operative acronym standing for awareness, growth, altruism, purpose, and enthusiasm. And these legacies that I put together now for almost 4 years ago, we have a room that talks into valuing your value, and a personal development self help room that I have dedicated myself to be speaking in at least, um, until at least for the next couple years, that I want to give into this space free to come in and listen to us and give you guys our perspectives on what is next for you and how we move and transition towards those, hopefully to strengthen you and how you move and transition through those things that get transmuted from the negative into the positive states. And so that's every Wednesday from usually either 6:30 or 7 p.m. To till 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And we have updates and things of that nature. But you go in there, you find us, you follow us, and it gives you updates if you allow it to on that side of it. So that's always really exciting on that side of it. The next, I have a couple of different workshops that I will be talking into confidence around my book, 11 Pillars of Confidence. That book for you to step into is on about everywhere online, whether it's Amazon, Barnes and Nobles, Apple Books, eBay, Walmart, Kindle, Nooks, on and on and on. Online, if you Google it, you'll find it. 11 Pillars of Confidence. I also write an article once a month that talks into different aspects that can uh, give some influential hug or nudge towards whatever you're up to in your life, uh, dealing with mindset and leadership. In Brains Magazine, that's with a Z, magazine, comes out every month on that side of it. Just look up Arthur J. Rutledge and you should find whatever articles about that. The next one will be up next week. And then Instagram and LinkedIn, Arthur J. Rutledge. Instagram, Arthur's underscore mindset, ARTHURS underscore mindset. And I have a lot of quotes and things that I'm talking to spaces on there. And hopefully I can get Nathaniel on there and do an IG live and get some of the same love that he's giving me on this space. And I'm also on Pinterest. You can find me same name Arthur J. Rutledge, and also Linktree, which has over 100 of my talks, whether it been by interviews or by clubhouse or seminar, etc., for you to go back in a backlog of that. And that's also on Clubhouse as well, when you follow the club. And that would be it. So that's a lot. Ooh, and I'm writing on my, what I have going on next is I'm writing on my second book right now. uh, I don't want to say the title right now, but it definitely will help us to be stronger in our faith as we move through those walks of life, and remembering how we empowered ourselves before, and remembering that we always have the power to do it over and over again. So talking to habits and the integrity it takes to own our authentic self over and over again.
Mm.
And that would be it.
Okay,
If that's
thanks.
not enough, but
Yeah. Well, thank you very much. And as everyone knows, I'm a philosopher's poet, and I'll end by saying what I always say: the world spends with me, but also with you.